Hi, I'm Danielle with Stitch and Designs. Thanks for watching. This is part 2 of this little video. I'm going to be showing you how to be able to use these foam boards from the Dollar Tree to be able to wrap up your fabric, and then you can also have a beautiful fabric wall. So what I'm using is foam board from Dollar Tree, and I've already had some like pre-cut, but if this is the first time you're using it, depending on the depth of your shelf that you have and also the height of your shelf, or I guess that would be height so you can't see my hands, it will determine how big and or how large you cut it. So I lay it so you can, I'm laying it down on the wider side of it, and then this is my height. So my shelves are roughly, I think, like 15 inches. So I have mine just under, I think they're like 14 and a half inches tall. And then the depth of my shelves are actually quite large. I think they're 12. I can't remember. Like they're pretty deep. They're deep enough that I can equally split this into thirds. But if you have a narrower shelf, you can just make this a little bit narrower. But just realize or take note, when you have a narrower board, your fabric will just wrap around it more times, and so then it'll be a little bit bulkier, where the wider this is, the less your fabric will wrap around it, so then they'll be a little bit thinner. But then if you have not enough fabric, it won't actually wrap around your material or your boards all the way. So this is just one that I happen to have. None of my boards exactly will split this evenly. And then you want to use the smooth side and a smooth top. And there are different ways you can do this. You don't have to pre-draw the lines if you don't want to. This part's just easier for me, just to take the extra time. Oop, this is definitely gonna be a little bit big. Let's go here. Let's go there. So I'm gonna remark that one. Just go there. And then when you're marking, you just want to make sure that your bottom is lined up across. Because if your bottoms are a little askew, then your line's going to be skewed. So you want to make sure both sides are even. And then same when you get to this side, you want to make sure your bottom and also your side is even. And then you're going to need there you go, just like a little X-Acto knife or box cutter. There we go. And then just cut along your line. I'm not actually cutting all the way through the foam board. I have it hanging off the edge just in case, for the edge of my table, just in case it does go through. You can put a cutting mat down and then cut this on your cutting mat if you wanted to. And on this one, because I'm kind of on the table, I have my fingers underneath to give space in between the table and the board, just in case. Okay, flip your board over, put a little bend in it, and then that gives you your crease. And you're literally just cutting through the paper side on the back of your foam board, and then that excess piece you won't need. Give those guys their crease. And sometimes my edges don't always come out beautiful. They do come out wrinkled and or the paper rips or the foam on the inside bunches up. So if like stuff like, I don't know if you can, that little curl cue right there, my paper, I just pull it off. And then I just make a little pile, and this is not very smooth. You can just kind of pull out that chunk of foam. It's not a big deal. Now let's see how I did. One is still smaller than the other. And then just make your pile. And then I usually like to cut off the tags. It's really not a big deal. Total personal preference on that one. This one was a little bit smaller than the other one, so I started it off the edge just a tiny bit. I'm gonna do the same thing in the middle. If you want to use a ruler so that way your marks are more precise, then you can do that. That's how you make the foam boards, and I'm just going to finish making. I got 2 more. I thought I'd just give a little tip to be able to help when cutting these. I line up my blade with my mark. I go away from my line first, and then I bring it back into my board to be able to help with, or to cut it. It does, I've noticed that it makes a nice smoother cut instead of just trying to drop it in and then going back, lining it up, kind of putting a little bit of pressure as I'm pushing it away from me. And then as you're cutting this, just being very mindful, because this is a sharp blade. You don't want to have it be positioned to where your body is directly behind where you're cutting, so you're cutting directly into you, because if you accidentally go too fast and your blade slips, you don't want to accidentally cut yourself. So angle it off to the side with your body on the opposite side. So my line is here, but my body is here. So if I slip and I bring it back too far away, then I'm not hitting myself. Where if my body was more here and I'm cutting, I'd be cutting into my body. So just like a little tip for that one when cutting, just make sure you don't accidentally cut yourself. So be careful. And then watch where your fingers are too. And if you notice, I did the exact same thing when I was cutting the top as I was doing the back. So I go away and then I bring it in. Just like that. Now that the boards are finished being cut out, I'm going to go ahead and start wrapping my fabric. This is a scrap piece that I've already used. I didn't quite use everything, but I want to make sure to save it. So depending on the size of your fabric, if you want your fabric to be right side up, anyway, I'm going to have to flip this, but it's okay. So this is a scrap piece of fabric, and it is larger than my board, so I'm going to have to fold it into thirds. Or small thirds. Okay. And then I pull enough forward over the top of the board so that way I can wrap it around the other side of the foam board. And then I hold it in the middle, and then I keep my arm down onto the table and onto the fabric, and then I kind of pull this direction on the board with the fabric so that way it pulls this one tight. And then I just kind of keep tension by keeping my hand here and then kind of putting a pressure going that direction, and then also putting a pressure going on this hand going that direction. So that way it just helps keep the fabric tight. And then this one has a long piece, so I'm just going to fold that in. And then if you saw, the fabric sticks over the edge, and so it's not quite enough to wrap around the whole side. So what I'm going to do is fold the fabric inward, pull that little piece out. And then what you're going to need are these little alligator clips. Put it up here. So then that's what I use. I just clip it to the top of the fabric, and it also goes through, if you have a lot of layers. I just do like 2 or 3 layers, but this one doesn't have as many layers, so I just go all the way through to the end. So for me, I always put my clips up. So technically, so my fabric is upside down. If I wanted my fabric to be facing the correct side up, when I'm looking at it, the side that's flipped up to me needs to be upside down. So that way then the part that's touching my table would be the correct side up, or it'd be directionally wise, it would be the one that faces the proper direction. So I'll try to do that on this one. This is also another scrap piece. So for you in the video, it is correct side up that you can see, but this is also facing, the camera is facing the opposite direction. To me, this is upside down to me. So then when I look at, so if I were to flip this over, this is now the correct side up to me, but for you guys in the camera, you're looking at it as upside down. So this will also be too tall, so I will need to go into thirds. So now when I folded the fabric over to the top of the board, when I look at it, it is the correct side up. And so I wrap enough around, hold a little bit of tension, and then this is a long piece, so I'm going to fold that in. Oh, came undone. Should have done that first. Now I'll just pull tension again, and then fold it over. And I just kind of help pull, I grab the edge of the fabric and then I just pull it over to help put a little more tension. Grab one of my clips. And there it is. And then I just get a little, oop, that's upside down. I get a little pile going. This is technically one that I'm actually currently still using for some projects, but I'm still going to wrap it up anyway because I accidentally used its board to wrap something else. So that way I don't forget it has a board. And then also when you first start wrapping your fabric, so here's one that I haven't cut into just yet. So when I get my fabric, this is also a good opportunity to inspect your fabric as well. Because you open it up, you can look at your fabric all the way around. So it is also too large to just have in half. And then also depending on the height of your boards, you will possibly need to fold it into fourths instead of thirds. And then if you do happen to have like a piece that has like a really long salvage end, like this white stripe right here, you can just take your fabric scissors and just cut that off. That will help when you fold it up, so then it doesn't actually fold back on itself and then all that stuff. But I try to hand press out any of the big wrinkles if I can help, if I can. So, and then what I was meaning by when you start, depending on how much, my foam board, little fuzzies, depending on how much fabric you take here and wrap around the edge, will kind of determine as you're going, if you notice that when you get to the end of a board where it's like you don't really want to fold it back on itself and you just want to have it be on like towards the edge or a little bit more in, you either take more at the start or you take less at the start. So I'm just going to start with a little bit more than I did on the other ones. See how that turns out. And this is a non-directional print, so it really honestly doesn't matter how you fold it. And then it's nice to have a pair of snips or scissors nearby that you can cut off the little long pieces. And so this is enough to be able to wrap around to the front. And then I clip. And this one is a directional print, so I'm making sure that the right side up to me is facing what would be right side up. And so when I pull it over, for what you see, is it upside down still? I can't tell what you're seeing. I think it's upside down for you. Just take a look at the fabric. I'm not doing like a hardcore inspection of it, but just a general, do I see any big blemishes or big issues? That looks good. I'm hoping I can get this one in thirds. This one is a canvas material. So it'll be a little bit thicker than the other ones. Pull down.
Yay.
If you have a piece of fabric that is more than 1 or 2 yards, you're gonna really you might need some help to be able to lay it out to get it folded in the thirds or the fourths, however you're gonna be doing it. So for this one turned out to be more of a water resistant canvas. I didn't realize, I thought it was just regular canvas. So for my canvas, or for my waterproof canvases, water resistant canvases, I roll them to help get rid of the wrinkles. Because they can iron, but they don't iron the best. So it's easier to just roll them. if you, to help get it a little bit tighter, I just stick a finger on either end and I twist. Get the one going the right direction. That helps kind of cinch it up a little bit more. And then if you want to, you could put a rubber band around it. I just stick it in with all the other ones and they kind of hang out and hold each other. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to hit the camera. This last one is 2 yards. So I'm gonna open it, we'll see which direction. On the larger prints, I tend to fold them the opposite direction. Just because they're a little bit not quite as wide. Doing it when it's folded on the side versus if I kept the other direction. Sorry, slight pause for chit-chatting with my dad. I personally, so if I were to roll this, the selvage edge would be exposed on this side. So I personally like to keep my selvage edge on the inside. And then plus doing that flip, I have half of it folded fairly nicely, and now I get to do the other side. And then the larger your piece of fabric is, because my previous ones are all 1 yard or smaller for the scrap pieces, then it's not always going to want to fold super nicely. It's just the way of the game, and you can try, and sometimes it does like to fold nicely for me and line up really nicely, but when I've gotten like my 3-4 yarders, yeah, those don't always, by the time I get rolled and go down, it doesn't always want to line up and look as pretty, but you try your best. And then if you wanted to, you could kind of like just flop it over on itself, and then that way you can kind of continue to work and folding it, making sure it lines up. And it would be easier if I have a chair on that side. If my chair wasn't there, my excess fabric could just hang nicely. Okay. And it is like right on the edge, which is fine because it will still fit into my shelf. whimpering?
Coffee
Hi.
left over from this morning.
What do you think of the corgi fabric? He's like, there's no tricolor. Where's the tricolor? So because this was a 2-yard cut of fabric, instead of clipping all of the layers, which would make open the clip, I only have it clipped on for a couple of pieces. So there's like one, I think just one underneath it, but it is clipped to 3 of the rolls.